Assalamu alaikum guys, this is Dr. Muhammad Ali from Department of Economics, School of Social Sciences and Humanities, NUST, Islamabad, and we are here with lecture 9 for seminars in advanced human resource economics. This is a PhD level course. If you are not from NUST and if you're watching this, then don't try to find lecture number 1 to 8 on my channel, because this is a regular university level class, and we are recording this because we had to shift to e-learning solutions because of the coronavirus. And this is March 30th, 2020, and we are going to continue our classes after mids on YouTube. So this is the first of the series, and we are going to talk about knowledge spillovers. We are actually going to continue talking about knowledge spillovers in this video. Before mids in lecture 8, we talked about knowledge spillovers through foreign direct investment and imports, and we discussed the role of human capital in the process of knowledge absorption and knowledge transfer from one source to the other. In this video, I'm going to discuss one of the one of my papers from the PhD dissertation that was done based on agent-based modeling, and I'm going to discuss some of the key aspects of the paper because it is also related to knowledge spillovers. And then in the second half, I will discuss related and unrelated variety and how there are different dynamics, economic dynamics that are associated with different types of economic structures that we may have in our economy. So let's start. So basically, we discussed this already in lecture number 8, where we talked about the difference between knowledge spillovers and knowledge transfers or knowledge exchange. Knowledge spillovers should be differentiated in this discussion because knowledge spillovers are the type of knowledge flows that are involuntary, meaning that the rightful owner of the intellectual knowledge does not get the full compensation for the transfer of knowledge. Knowledge transfer, on the other hand, is voluntary knowledge transfer, and we see this kind of knowledge transfer very frequently, that sometimes universities engage with each other. Universities and industry also sometimes form a contract in which universities do the knowledge creation, and then that knowledge is transferred to the industry. It can go the other way around as well. For example, we have a National Science and Technology Park housed in NUST right now, and one of the key reasons for that park is to develop these kind of linkages, that industry asks for a certain kind of products, certain kind of solutions from university, and since university has the human capital and the knowledge stock that can transform knowledge into something innovative and that can give industry or some firms competitive edge, not only inside the domestic market but also in international market. So these kind of knowledge transfers or knowledge exchange agreements, they are voluntary in nature because both parties actually agree upon sharing knowledge. On the contrary, in case of knowledge spillovers, these are involuntary knowledge spillovers. For example, this example I've given in the previous classes as well, that Telenor, for example, when they started operating in Pakistan, the customer service of the mobile telecom companies were really bad, and also for the landline companies, PTCL, it was not very good. But with the introduction of Telenor, one of their key competitive advantages was customer service, and they rapidly take over the market because of their good quality services and also customer support. And because of that, the domestic competitors of Telenor, they realized that they also have to improve their customer services, and they did that. And right now you can see that customer services have been improved in the telecom industry, and also in other sectors as well. I'm not going to associate that with everything with Telenor, but definitely in case of telecom industry, Telenor brought some knowledge from international market. It brought into notice that customer service is very, very important, and you can gain market share from that. And following that path, many of the domestic service providers, even the national telecom provider, they also had to change their way of doing things. So this is an example of knowledge spillovers. Telenor did not intend to transfer that knowledge to the domestic companies. And another example could be of multinationals. For example, Siemens. Siemens has been operating in Pakistan for 40 plus years, maybe more. And what they have done is that they have trained many workers at their premises. They have trained how to do different types of things. In the beginning, they were also manufacturing mobile phones in Pakistan, electronic appliances and so on. Right now, they are limited to repair and manufacturing of big industrial machinery, the rotors and stators and motors and so on. So they have trained manpower from Pakistan. So they did not bring their manpower from Germany, because Siemens is from Germany. They trained manpower from Pakistan. So when they transferred their knowledge, the intention was that our workers will work for us. So we have to train them, and then they will work for us. So company will make profit, for example. But what happens is that if some workers leave and join other companies, they transfer that knowledge to other companies. So that is one of the types of knowledge spillovers. And many multinational companies do not like this kind of spillover, because sometimes trade secrets also get leaked. And of course, they lose their competitive advantages. So these are the examples of knowledge spillovers, and they are different from knowledge exchange. That I think this is very important to mention. Channels, some of them I've already mentioned. International trade could be one of the channels where imports have embodied knowledge in them. So if you have enough knowledge, if you are educated enough in terms of in innovation literature, it is called absorptive capacity. So if you have capacity to absorb this knowledge, then the knowledge embodied in imports can also be accounted for in the domestic production. Then foreign direct investment, I already gave 2 examples of that. Patents and copyrights. So patents and copyrights, they give you almost complete information about a product. When you go for a patent, you have to disclose everything, what you are doing, and most of it is mentioned in the patent document. And it is to make sure that that particular kind of knowledge is associated with the authors. So if somebody else comes up and claims that this is my innovation, that patent would be the assurance that this knowledge belongs to some guy in Germany, for example. So in order to make sure that this knowledge belongs to me, I have to make sure that all of the steps and key things are actually mentioned in that paper. So that document, a patent, is only useful when it can be enforced in the court of law. So if rule of law is not very good in a country, then having patents means nothing, because if rule of law is very weak, then you cannot sue the guys who have actually violated your intellectual property rights. You cannot do anything. So it depends on the rule of law. That's why innovative firms prefer to trade instead of having their innovative R&D machinery in the countries where rule of law is weak. So patents and copyrights, you can also learn from those patents and copyrights as well. So this is also one of the channels of spillovers. And high-skilled migration, the example that I gave of Siemens is for the domestic market. But if there are high-skilled workers in, for example, Pakistan, where I'm sitting right now, and if they migrate to another country, let's say Afghanistan, then they will also take their human capital to Afghanistan. So from there, from Pakistan, they must have learned something. So all this knowledge will transfer from Pakistan to Afghanistan. So this is one of the ways of knowledge spillovers. This is why developed countries have this skill-based immigration program. So they want all the bright minds from around the world to travel to their countries and to help them build their, further develop their empire. Then direct tech agreements, this is knowledge, not really knowledge spillovers, but this is knowledge exchange. Then we have types of spillovers within the same industry and across different industries. So for example, in textile industry, if jeans manufacturer comes up with some knowledge that can be used in the garment industry for babies, for example. So these are different industries within the same broader industry category. So they can learn from each other within the same category. But if knowledge flows from one industry to the other industry, meaning across industries, then this is called vertical knowledge spillovers. So the first case was horizontal within the same industry. The second case is vertical spillovers across different industries. One of the examples, very famous examples, is of Henry Ford, when he was looking for a better method to produce vehicles. He got some ideas from meat manufacturing plants, and then he used that knowledge to produce cars in his farm. So meat and cars, very different industries, but knowledge actually transferred from meat industry to automobile industry. And in some way, in one way or the other, that assembly line is still used in the automobile manufacturing plants. So knowledge can also transfer across industries as well. Okay, so now this was kind of a revision of what we have learned about knowledge spillovers. This is one of my papers from my PhD thesis, and this is an agent-based model, and this is only about knowledge spillovers. So I have mentioned 3 or 4 different types of channels of knowledge spillovers. Here we will only talk about knowledge spillovers, and we are only talking about FDI here. We are not talking about anything. The only channel is FDI here. And then we are looking at knowledge spillovers that go through, that come from FDI, and what is the role of intellectual property rights. So this is the basic premise of this paper. The setting of the background, I've already talked about it in the beginning. So knowledge, as we know, is the key component of the shaping of an economy, and recombination of knowledge, meaning learning from each other and coming up with the new knowledge, tend to give us innovation. And innovation, as we know, is one of the key factors behind the development of the developed countries. So it improves productivity and also the quality of products. And we also know from the knowledge literature, innovation economics, that innovation or knowledge accumulation is not only the function of domestic efforts. So you are doing your research and development, but it's not limited to that. Knowledge accumulation can also be facilitated by some of the knowledge that comes from outside the boundaries of a country. So right now we are talking about countries, but you can apply the similar types of constructs or concepts in case of firms as well. So if knowledge comes from outside the boundaries of the firm, that will be external knowledge. So what we are trying to say here is that there is domestic research and development effort to create knowledge, and then there is some knowledge that is coming from outside the boundaries in the shape of knowledge spillovers. You learn from your competitors in a sense. You can also learn from your suppliers. You can also learn from your clients. So you are somewhere around here, clients are below. So you buy something from suppliers, inputs, value add it, make something new, sell it to the clients. So you have, of course I'm simplifying it, but you can learn something from the suppliers as well, the ways of doing things. You can also learn something from the demands of the clients as well. So these kind of knowledge spillovers are happening outside the boundaries of the firm. So knowledge accumulation is not only the function of your in-house activities, it's also a function of that knowledge that is produced outside the boundaries of an enterprise. Then we have already kind of discussed this. Foreign direct investment can be a source of knowledge spillovers. Labor mobility could be one of the, in the example that I gave of Siemens, labor mobility was the source of knowledge spillovers. Then you can have demonstration effects, backward and forward linkages, and these could be the source of spillovers as well. This is useful, for example, if you're talking about the host country of the foreign direct investment, all multinational companies. Knowledge spillovers are useful for them. Of course, they want to invite innovative firms to operate in their country so that they can learn from them. But from the point of view of the foreign investors, the multinational companies, it is not in their favor to operate in the countries where their knowledge might be leaked, because knowledge creation, innovation, research and development, these are very expensive, costly activities with high risk of failure. So when firms do R&D, they take a lot of risk, they invest a lot of money, not only money, time, resources, other resources as well. And if they risk leaking that knowledge to their competitors, then there is no incentive to do more innovation, right? So in this sense, if there is a risk of their knowledge being stolen by their competitors, then it is not in favor of the foreign investors to invest in such country. In such a case, intellectual property rights, we will see IPR many times in this paper. Intellectual property rights give you the rights to protect your knowledge. So for example, if I come up with something new, if I invent something, I can go to the patent office and I can ask them to protect this knowledge in my name. So I will be the author of that product, and I will ask the patent office to give all the rights of that knowledge to me. Of course, it will be for a limited time period depending on the product life cycle of that industry, but for specified time period, that knowledge will be mine. And in this way, the system incentivizes the inventors to keep on inventing, because if they do not incentivize, then there is no incentive to innovate anymore. Because as I said before, research and development is a very costly activity, and it takes a lot of time to come up with something new that is competitive, and that can give you increase in your market share. But if you risk losing that knowledge, then there is no incentive to do any research at all, right? And so intellectual property rights, again, from the point of view of innovative multinational companies, intellectual property rights are something positive, right? But some authors also argue that if you protect knowledge, if you stop knowledge flows, then you kind of encourage monopoly. Because if there is one firm that is innovative, that can invest a lot in research and development, that has a lot of money, for example, big giant enterprises, then they will have the monopoly for indefinite period of time, because knowledge will not flow to the knowledge will flow, but the smaller or domestic companies will not be able to copy this knowledge because of the intellectual property rights. So some authors argue that free flow of knowledge is necessary for development of a country, because when you allow the information to flow freely between agents, then innovation actually increases. And if you restrict knowledge flows, let's say for 10 years, then for 10 years, that piece of information, that piece of knowledge, if that could be used by other firms, and this could actually increase the quality of that knowledge if those other firms invested in that knowledge and came up with something new. So in a way, one strand of the literature on intellectual property rights argues that by restricting knowledge flows, you're actually restricting the development. So this is the second point of view. So one of the papers is by Baldwin and Levine that talk about this, and they say that physical intellectual property is different from physical property, because stealing physical property has different kinds of implications. But if you regulate or like keep the knowledge that you have developed, then restricting that knowledge flows for a certain period of time could actually hamper innovation and ultimately growth. So this is the premise of this paper. And again, to repeat, we are talking about multinational companies, knowledge flows from those companies, knowledge spillovers from those companies. And we are talking about the role of intellectual property in that whole story. And in the literature, it's not very clear if having intellectual property actually boosts knowledge flows, creates monopoly or not. There are different papers, different conceptual papers, but there is no consensus on it. That's why we have developed this agent-based model to see if this, in this very simple settings, we could see if intellectual property hampers knowledge flows and increases innovation, or it's the other way around, right? So in these slides, I will explain one by one what are the building blocks of this model, and then I will just highlight few of the findings of this paper. So the whole purpose of this exercise, of this 40 minutes lecture, is to give you some insights on how foreign direct investments could be the source of knowledge spillovers, and how intellectual property rights could hamper that knowledge flows, or maybe increase knowledge flows as well. It depends on what answers we'll get from this. Okay. In this setup, we have both multinational firms and domestic firms. The only difference is in terms of their research and development stock. We'll talk about it later on. Then we have assumed that multinational firms are always innovative, and the reason is that the whole story of innovation, we are talking about innovation in terms of inflow of knowledge from multinational companies. This is also possible that multinational companies are coming to seek knowledge, but we'll keep in mind that the setup is designed in a way that we are in a developing country, and innovative multinational companies are coming in with their knowledge. And now we're talking about, if we have better IPR, would we encourage innovation or stop innovation? Okay. And domestic firms can either be innovators or imitators. We have not limited to that. Some of them are imitators, some of them are innovators. So it's not just one. They can be innovators as well or imitators as well. And the basis of competition is based on price and quality. So competition is gauged by market share. So higher the market share, more power the firm has in the market. But that market share is determined by price and quality. So lower price and better quality. Okay. Firms improve the quality of their products by innovating or imitating. Imitation can also result in improvement because, for example, if I was producing something before, but I learned that my competitor is doing producing this product by using different kind of input, I could actually exactly copy his method and improve my own product. So it will not be innovation because I'm copying his knowledge, but it will be an improvement in my quality because I'm applying that knowledge to my own production process. Innovation output depends on the research level of the firms. Higher the research level, how higher the chances of innovation, because research level means a knowledge stock. Knowledge can spill over from one firm to the other. So there are different types of knowledge: codifiable knowledge, tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is the type of knowledge that requires social interaction. So codifiable knowledge is something that you can write down on a paper, but tacit knowledge requires face-to-face interaction. So knowledge spillovers most of the times are in terms of codifiable knowledge, that the knowledge that can be transferred without the need for the inventor to interact with you. Okay, so we have assumed that theta is the proportion of knowledge spillover that is possible from foreign direct investment to the domestic firm. So some of this knowledge that multinational companies possess, some of this knowledge can be transferred to the domestic firms, and other knowledge cannot be, unless you engage with them in a knowledge exchange agreement. Right now we are not talking about knowledge exchange, we are just talking about knowledge spillovers. So some component of that knowledge can be transferred to the domestic firms. This is the concept that is covered by the parameter theta. Then okay, so there are 100 units of knowledge, for example, and theta says, let's say 50% of this knowledge can be absorbed. So 50 units of knowledge can be absorbed by the domestic firms. But then there is another layer of absorption that depends on the ability of domestic firms to absorb this knowledge. So that is given by gamma. So gamma gives you the absorptive capacity, meaning the 50 units that can be transferred, how much of those units will actually be transferred, because this depends on the level of absorptive capacity of the domestic firms. So let's say that this gamma is also 50%. Then what it means is that the foreign direct investment or multinational companies have 100 units of knowledge, 50 units can be transferred, but 25 units will end up being transferred because domestic firms can only appropriate 50% of the available knowledge, right? So 25 units will be transferred to the domestic firms because they do not have enough absorptive capacity to exploit everything that is available for the taking. And then we have omega. It's a IPR parameter. It tells you for how many years or how many periods this knowledge is restricted. So even though there is a possibility of 25 units of knowledge being transferred from multinational companies to the domestic firms, IPR will restrict you to exploit this knowledge. So it is quite possible that all 100 units were exploitable, but intellectual property rights will stop you from using even 1 unit of that knowledge because it is protected by law. And innovation output, whatever you come up with, the prototype, the invented product, has to go through the IPR system for validation of innovation. So the IPR system should pass it through the system and declare it as the new product that can be associated with the authors. So this is the basic premise of the paper. First, you come up with the new product through imitation or innovation. You develop prototypes. You send it to the IPR system. You say that, okay, this is my new innovation. Now please give all the intellectual property rights to me because I'm the inventor of this product. Intellectual property rights system, what patents office do actually, this is a simplified version of that. They will check if the exact same knowledge is protected or not. So if this knowledge is protected right now, then the patent office or intellectual property rights system will stop the inventor to introduce this product into the market. If this knowledge is not protected, on the other hand, then they will check if this product is entirely new. So it is quite possible that some similar or exactly the same type of knowledge was protected before, but the time limit of that protection has been expired. So if that is the case, which is here, if this knowledge was previously protected, then intellectual property rights system will not give them any rights, and they will allow them to introduce it into the market. On the other hand, if this product is entirely new, then the system will assign property rights, will give the entire property rights to you, and then allow this product to be introduced in the market. So this is how the entire intellectual property system works. Then this is how the dynamics of market share works. So first of all, we have quality. Let's say whatever the product I have, I'm talking about initial phase. So there is no innovation, there's nothing. This is one product that you have right now, and you are starting a new firm. You created a product, this is a given quality, and based on this quality, you will get a market share. Okay, and market share is based on exogenously given aggregate demand. Whatever the demand for that product is, you'll get a market share from that. And price, as we discussed before, the market share depends on price and quality. So depending on your labor productivity, you'll have prices. I will explain the equations later on. You'll understand the mechanism behind all that. But for now, just keep in mind that market shares are determined by quality and price. And based on the market shares, firm will produce output, it will earn some profits, and from those profits it will invest in research and development. So this is the point where multinational companies differ from the local firms. Multinational companies have the share of their profits as R&D input, plus they also have a parent firm. Remember, these are multinational companies. They also have a parent firm in their home countries. So we are assuming that multinational firms get a share of knowledge from their parent companies as well. So all the research and development is not happening only in this country, in this firm. Some of the research and development is coming from the parent company as well. So this is that part, research and development T minus 1. This is that part. So one of the component is coming from the parent company as well, and some of this is also from the taken as a share of the profits. But local firms can only invest as much as their profit is. So they invest certain share of the profits. R is that share of profit, and either they invest 0, or if profit is negative or 0, they invest 0 on R&D. If profit is positive, then they invest R, a proportion of their profit, in research and development. That research and development develops some knowledge and increases the research level, which in turn improves the absorptive capacity of the firms. And not only that they use their internal knowledge, they also use the external knowledge in the innovation process, they come up with something new, send it to IPRS, and if that product is allowed to enter the market, then their quality improves, and then the system starts again. Okay, so the quality is dependent on R&D, research level, absorptive capacity, and all these things are dependent on profit, market share, and all. So this is how the system works in agent-based model. Now this is the production function. You might be wondering where capital is. So capital is coming indirectly in this system. So Y is output, A is labor productivity, and L is labor input. K is indirectly included in this equation through A. So labor productivity is assumed to increase when capital is increased. So better capital increases labor productivity. So to keep things simple, we have assumed that capital is entering the production function indirectly through labor productivity. Then we have price levels. So mu is the markup on cost. W is wages. It's at the bottom you'll see omega. Omega is not omega, it's W is typing error, and P is price. So higher this productivity level is, lower will be the price, because for the same wages firm is getting higher productivity. So this is why prices will be lower. And markup rate is how much markup they want to make on cost. So this is why it is 1 plus mu. With higher the productivity is, lesser will be the weight of wages in the prices, and this is why prices will be lower if productivity is higher. Okay, so productivity, think about productivity as Y divided by L. Okay, but L depends on how much, how you want to measure it. So for example, you could do Y divided by L by number of products divided by number of people used to make that product. That is also Y divided by L. Or you could use it in terms of how much money the company made and divided by employee hours. That will also be labor productivity. Depends on how you're defining it. Okay. Then we have profit function. Profit revenue is price multiplied by output minus wages multiplied by labor. So this is profit, very simple. And then we have growth of productivity. How much is the growth in productivity is dependent on the growth of your output. And the K right here is called Kaldor-Fundon parameter. Kaldor-Fundon parameter. And this tells you how much of the growth in output would translate into growth of productivity. Okay. So we don't have to go into detail of the theory behind it, but let's assume that this is as it is right now. Our main interest of this paper is in the research and development and innovation, so we are going towards that right now. So this is a quality equation. Quality depends on, this is the external quality, by the way. How much of the domestic quality is dependent on foreign quality. So F stands for frontiers products, the market leaders products, and multiply it by the spillover coefficient, how much of this quality can be absorbed, and then how much of the quality will be absorbed based on this absorptive capacity parameter. Okay, so at the example that I gave you, 100 units of knowledge, if this is 0.5, then 50% of this knowledge can be transferred. If this is also 0.5, then 25 units will be eventually transferred to the quality of the domestic firm, because the absorptive capacity was only 0.5. Then we have absorptive capacity. This is based on this formula. The beauty of this formula is that when this is very high, if research level is very, very high, then this entire thing becomes 0. And absorptive capacity is 1, meaning that whatever spillover is, this firm will absorb 100%, because this whole thing will be 1. On the other hand, if this is 0, then this will be 1 minus 1, and absorptive capacity will be 0. Meaning, if there is a zero research level, it means that they cannot absorb anything. They do not have capacity to absorb external knowledge. So in that sense, when this is 1, if this is 0, then this entire thing is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So there will be no absorptive capacity to transfer this knowledge from foreign sources to the domestic sources. Then we have research level. Research level equation depends on the last period's research level. Then you multiply it by 1 minus delta. So delta is the depreciation of knowledge. Some of the knowledge gets outdated, some of it gets forgotten, but let's think about it as knowledge that has been obsolete. Okay, this is research level from the last period plus research and development that you're doing right now, your internal research and development, plus this is the weighted average of the research that has been done outside of the boundaries of the firm. So this is for the entire industry. Weighted average of the research level inside the entire industry, how much of it can be spilled over, and how much of that whole thing can be absorbed based on the absorptive capacity of the firm. So this whole thing is the share of knowledge that can be absorbed by the firm from the external sources. And for domestic firms, as we discussed in that hierarchical diagram as well, they either invest 0 or they invest some share of the profits. For foreign firms, as explained before, the last year's research and development and some share of the profits as well. Okay, so the main thing is market share. The main mechanism of how much money this firm can make is based on the market share. So Z is the market share. This is the previous times market share. And this whole thing is the competitiveness. So this is the market's competitiveness. This is my competitiveness. Okay. So if my competitiveness is higher than market competitiveness, then this whole thing will be more than 1. Okay. And let's say this is 2. So 2 minus 1. And then this phi is the sensitivity parameter to competitiveness. So if this is 1, then some part of that 1 will be absorbed or added in the market share. Okay, so market share, this will be multiplied with 1, and then this will be multiplied with whatever this comes out to be. If this is 2, and if this is, let's say, 4, if this is 2, then this whole thing will be 2, and 2 minus 1 is 1, and if this phi is 0.5, you multiply zt minus 1 with phi, and you add it into zt minus 1, you will get right now this year's market share of this firm. Okay, so this all depends on the competitiveness of the firm. And E is calculated by multiplying quality with the weight of quality and dividing by P. So the higher the price is, lower the competitiveness is, higher the quality is, higher the competitiveness is. There is a weight of quality. So we are not putting the entire quality in competitiveness, we are just putting some weight on it. Okay, so this weight of quality is given by this sign right here. I don't remember how this sign is called right now, so forgive me for that. So this is how E is calculated, and you plug this E inside this equation. This gives you the market share. All right, so these are the initial parameters that we give to the system, and then allow it to run for a certain period of time, let's say 100 periods. So there are a bunch of these kind of diagrams in the paper that comes out of this whole model. So what you can see here is this sigma is the technology shocks. Technology shocks meaning the level of innovation. The technology is changing. New technology is coming up, meaning there is more and more innovation going on. So when you go from left to right, innovation is increasing. Okay, when you go from 0 to 20, here this is a IPR protection period. Higher this number is, higher the number of periods, meaning for, let's say at this point 5, it means the innovation is protected for 5 periods. 5 periods could be 5 years, 5 days, 5 months, depends on how you're modeling it. So in reality, the intellectual property rights are given in terms of years. So let's say these are years. 0, 5, 10, 15 and 20, we are increasing the protection period on this axis. Here we are increasing number of innovation. So we can see, and of course, sorry, on this axis we have standard deviation of productivity. So productivity is spreading. The higher the spread is, spread meaning that there is a lot of difference in productivity levels in the firms in the market. So lower the differences, meaning that the firms are very, very similar to each other. Higher the differences, meaning that some firms are doing very well, some firms are not doing very well. So productivity of firms are very different. So higher the differences, higher the standard deviation will be. So what you can see from here is that when innovation increases, the standard deviation of productivity also increases. So with increase in technology shocks, with increase in innovation, the standard deviation of productivity is increasing in this graph, right? So this is increasing. When you see at this level, so at very low level of productivity, at very low level of protection, intellectual property right protection, innovation level is when this is also very low, the standard deviation is also very low. So every firm is very similar in this context. When you increase the protection period, then you can see that there is slight increase in the standard deviation of productivity. So in a way, IPR is increasing the differences between the firms, productivity of firms. So this is what was expected as well, but the interesting thing is that after this 5 periods, there is no effect at all. So 5 is the good amount of production in this model. After five periods, there is no effect at all. There is just a straight line. No matter how much protection you give, it is just a straight line, right? And very similar here as well. So there is some kind of increase also at very high level of innovation. There is also some kind of increase here. You can see that when you increase the protection period from 5 to 10, there is some kind of increase here of standard deviation of productivity. But after that, again, straight line. So some evidence of having a high protection period, you can expect different levels of productivity. Okay, so firms start to become heterogeneous because of the increase in intellectual property rights. In this next graph, you'll see average quality levels. So at this axis here, you can see that when innovation is low, you can increase the protection period as much as you want. You'll not see any difference in weighted average quality because innovation is very low. But at high level of innovation, something around here, technology shocks, what you can see is that when you increase protection period, the weighted average quality goes down. What Baldwin and Levine was also showing in their paper. So weighted average level of quality is going down here. You see that? When you increase the protection level, weighted average quality in the market goes down. Means that stopping knowledge flows decreases the weighted average quality of the product in the market. So this is what Baldwin and Levine also pointed out, that if you want to increase the quality of the product in the market, you have to allow free flow of knowledge. But at very high levels of protection, this jump right here, it shows you that at very high levels of protection, this can actually go up as well. So for lower levels of protection, you decrease weighted average level of quality, but for higher level protection, you can increase it. So you can see it as you can differentiate it, because we did not model the type of product or product life cycle in this model. So this could be the reason why some industries might see this declining effect. Some industries might see this increasing effect at very high level of protection, depending on the life cycle of the product. Okay, so this is very interesting, kind of requires more study on it, but this is quite interesting, and we are actually working on it to make it to come up with something new along these lines as well. In this graph, you can see that we are looking at a standard deviation of quality. Previously, we were looking at a standard deviation of productivity. This is standard deviation of quality. How different is the level of quality among all the firms in the market? So when there is zero protection, there is high level of standard deviation. When you increase the level of protection, the standard deviation of the quality goes down. This is what this dip is showing right here. And this dip is very sharp when there is high level of innovation. So when there is high level of innovation and you increase the level of protection, the standard deviation of the quality goes down. And then it goes up again slightly when you increase the protection, but at the very low level of innovation, it's just a straight line. So in most cases, you can see this also in the paper as well. In most cases, these first 5 years are very, very important. They show you some kind of effect, and then the effect dies out later on. So basically, it tells you, this paper tells you that it increases intellectual property rights, increase the dispersion of labor productivity, market shares, and quality across firms. Some of the graphs are shown in these slides, not all of them, but the ones that are shown also gives you some idea about how the productivity levels and qualities might differ when you increase the level of intellectual property rights. Selection mechanism favors innovating firms because when you increase the level of protection, you're favoring innovative firms because they can innovate and protect their knowledge as well. So the imitating firms cannot replicate these existing quality levels. Our results do not change when extent of knowledge spillovers, technological shocks, and sensitivity to competitiveness is changed. So these are robust to these parameters. Average quality is high when knowledge spillovers are high, as expected, and protection period is short. So this is because, of course, the knowledge is free to be taken, and firms take advantage of that. And so in all in this paper, what we learned is that intellectual property rights kind of favor the innovative firms. They can cause monopoly. So if the aim of the government is to protect those innovative firms, then intellectual property rights are a good solution. But if the aim of the country is to increase knowledge flows, develop research base, and increase innovation, increase human capital, increase general country's absorptive capacity, then intellectual property rights might not be the way to go. The solution could be formal knowledge exchange agreements, but in case of knowledge spillovers, it might not work. So this ends the first part of this lecture. In second part, we will talk about related unrelated variety. So you can take a break, and okay, see you in the next video. Thank you.